Good, cool. Good to see you guys. So, where are we?
Where are we?
Where are we?
Let's just keep repeating it. I'm nowhere in my improv life. I feel like I haven't read anything, done anything. This is it, and I missed last week's meeting, so I feel like I'm just completely removed at this point.
Yeah, we figured out improv last week. I don't know. It's a shame that you missed
Shit! I knew something big was going to happen too. I'm really pissed.
it.
I guess I got a question. I can ask something.
Okay.
So we talk about being grounded. We talk about being in the scene. We talk about building characters and everything about improv. And I know in improv you're really not supposed to try to be funny, but how important is humor to you, like when you're building your scenes, or how important is humor to the overall aspect of like improv?
Well, I can answer that with a lot of different ways. I'm the kind of weird guy. I like. I'm really into English stuff, like English actors and English movies and shows and shit like that. And just the other night, I was watching this great English actor. Well, you know him, Alec Guinness. He was Obi-Wan Kenobi. You know him from that, but he was just one of the best. And an interview that he did uh, years ago, and someone was asking him. He used to do comedy too. I've seen some comedy movies of his when he was younger, and he was this incredible fucking dramatic actor as well. And um, they were asking him if he preferred to do comedy or dramas or which he liked better. And one of the things he was saying was there's no difference. If it's well written, it doesn't really matter. You play it the same way. Uh, maybe in certain kinds of comedy you might go a little bit bigger, but you just treat it as though it's real. And if if the stuff itself is funny in some way and it resonates in a funny way, then fine. But it's still just acting, and whether it's funny or not, there's a hair's difference between it.
Sorry. I think that's a trap I fall into pretty regularly.
We
And
all
I
do.
think that's why I think that's why I'm just so obsessed with like getting reps. Like I'm sure people have heard me use that term before. Like that's what I want to do is like, yeah, like I feel like I just need practice, not trying to be clever and not overthinking. Like, yeah, not trying to practice, trying to not be clever. I need to work on that. And it feels to me that just repetitions and constant practice like is the way to do that. Like it's not even like I feel like I necessarily need advice to solve this problem. I just need enough time to work it out. Like just and that's why I love taking Tom's class over and over again because it gives me that's what I want and gain the most from
Well,
it.
that's what it's for, and that's what I get it as much out of it as other people do. I mean, when I see things, uh, uh, and I tell you, hey, try this because this. It's because I've just seen it, and it's like, oh fuck, that. Oh yeah. So I'm coming up with things as well. So things are occurring to me just as they're occurring to you. But
Do you agree? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
do I
Go ahead.
agree about reps?
Do you agree that it's akin to muscle memory?
Well, here's the thing about reps, and if you want to equate it to muscles, it's great to go to the gym and do a bunch of reps, unless you're doing them wrong. Then you're going to hurt yourself. I know that because I hurt my elbow last year doing some stuff, and I was like, oh fuck. And uh, in fact, as I was doing one of the things, one of these muscle guys was walking by. He looked over at me and he did this,
With disgust. Ugh.
like you're gonna pay for that. And I said, what am I doing? And then 2 days later, holy crap, I'm still still feeling it. So if you reps are good as long as you don't as long as you don't deepen bad habits.
Then I guess how do you like? I guess I look at reps as the solution to that problem of overthinking and trying to always be clever and witty, because I think that's something I do try and do.
It's the same
for better or worse.
It's like with a sport. I mean, just as long as there's some coach there occasionally to say, no, you're lifting your knee wrong. It's not good. You know, so
I mean, every time I do improv is with a coach there, so that.
Oh well, that's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. You know,
you don't have to call me coach, Adam. We're just friends.
No.
So wait, so Adam, are you also saying that the more reps you get, the more comfortable you feel, and then the more natural it becomes, so you're not thinking so much, so therefore you can be more in the moment when you're on the stage?
That's what's felt like the solution thus far, and I think will continue to be the solution to that problem, because I think that's a chronic problem with me, and I'm just trying to.
Of everybody.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess just speaking for myself.
Yeah, but yeah, it's funny.
I definitely feel it.
It's funny, you know, when I was new at this, I did it in college, but then I just stopped doing this particular kind of thing for a long, long time, and then I started again, and things were different. But at the beginning, I'd say once I got in the cast and I was doing stuff, and I thought it was really good, and then I began to see that it was all right, but I'm here and I really could be here, you know, and it wasn't as good as I thought it was. It felt good, and I'm sure it worked in some way, but I felt like there was something more there that I couldn't reach. And then I ran into 12 hours of Dave Rosowski, and that was the end of that. And there were a few people in that class. It was a 2-day class, 6 hours, 6 hours. There were a few people in that class who thought they were good improvisers who couldn't take it. They left after a while. They just didn't like feeling like they didn't know what they were doing. They thought improv is this, and Dave Rosowski is telling them, no, it's this. And they like, I can't do that. If I do this, I'm going to have to give up this. Well, yeah. So reps with him, anytime he comes into town, I take the opportunity to do reps with him, because he'll find shit. You know, it's like he's surgical and he'll find shit.
I mean, in my personal case, it sounds like just getting reps with you, getting reps with Barry is the solution to this problem, or the.
I don't do reps with Dave Rosowski so that he'll tell me how great I am. I do reps with Dave Rosowski so that he'll tell me what I'm doing wrong. So he'll remind me what I should have known in the first place, which is cool. Sure. I took a Harold course in North Miami Beach every Sunday for a year. We did 7, 8, 9 Harolds per session. We just kept doing them over and over and over until we were sick of them. And then the next week we did 7, 8, 9 Harolds over and over. Okay, that one's done. Do another. Over and over, like fucking boot camp. And it wasn't fun after a while. It was grueling after a while. But then it was like, okay, some stuff just became, like you say, Adam, muscle memory.
I was just about the witty thing. I know there's just been plenty of times where I'm up there and you're in the middle of a scene, and there's there's definitely like a scenario where you can grab that quick laugh. You know, you see it, it's set up. The person says a certain thing, and there's that quick laugh, and I would always like kind of take it. It was a slam dunk guaranteed laugh, and then I realized that like I kind of just like salted the scene a little bit by me just grabbing the quick laugh, when if I would have waited a little longer, got a little deeper in the character, that there was a really deeper laugh and deeper everything to it if I just didn't grab the quick punchline. You know, it kind of like it just wasn't the move to make. But you don't realize that at the beginning, because you're judging your performance on laughter. If they laugh, I did good. Laughter equals good, but it didn't make me feel good after a while, you know.
Well, on different nights, different things are right. With different people, it depends what's going on around you. If everyone else in your little group that night is doing that sort of thing, it can be funny if it's working. Sure, you can lighten up and just have fun, um, and just don't fool yourself into thinking that you're doing deep, great improv. But it's fun, and that's fine. And there's no, you don't have to turn it into a scene from Hamlet every night. But
Mhm.
sometimes it's nice to dig a little deeper, or at least to be able to if you need to. Not to just be so intent on the witty stuff that you don't know how to go deeper. I think.
Yeah, I guess like everything in life, balance. You want to be
Yeah,
able to have that skill set, but you also want to be able to look at it in a whole different mindset.
right. Exactly. Well, I have this analogy. I know you love analogies. That's what I do. It's it's like if you think of a bicycle and you turn it upside down and it's sitting on its handlebars on its seat and it's upside down and you got the pedal and the chain and the wheel and they're all connected. So you can if you grab the wheel and turn it forward, the chain will move and the pedal will move, right? If you grab the chain and tug it this way or that way, the wheel will move and the pedal will move. And if you grab the pedal and do that, the chain will move and the wheel will move, correct? So if you think of a scene as having physicality, the stuff that we talked about, dynamics, louder, softer, moving apart, standing, all that kind of shit. And then as one of those things, um, emotion as another one of those things, and intellect or wit or verbal as another one of those things. They're all connected. You can't do emotion in a scene without also affecting physical and verbal. You can't do verbal without also affecting emotional and physical. So whichever way you choose to move your scene, all those three elements are going to be there. They're all connected. But I don't know too many people who use a bicycle by turning the wheel to make the pedal go. The, the way you use it is you push the pedal to make the chain and the wheel go. That's the most efficient way to make the bicycle work. So if you think of the pedal as the dynamic stuff that we do, louder, softer, less, more, closer, farther, all that kind of shit, then when you're doing that, the chain's going to move. So that means emotion's going to be there. And that's going to also cause the wheel to move. That means that verbal shit's going to be there. It's all going to be there. So why do it the other way? That's the easiest way to do it. You can't always just do verbal because you can't always think of shit to say. You can't just start with emotion because how are you going to just come up with an emotion and another emotion and another emotion? How do you generate those? It's hard. You can do it, but it's hard. Just like it's hard to move a bicycle by moving the chain. But if you move the fucking pedal, then you move the bicycle. And once you've done that, why would you ever try grabbing the chain or the fucking wheel? If it works, why would you ever not? Just fucking push the pedals. And once you've done that, what's the mystery? What's the mystery? What more do you need?
Tom, what's the pedal again? I'm sorry, I missed it.
The
pedal
pedal
is
is the scene dynamics.
scene dynamics,
Yeah,
spacing, and all the other
yes,
stuff. Yeah.
it's the one thing that you don't have to think about. It's the one thing you can do that you don't have to conjure up. You don't have to think of it or come up with the idea. Just fucking move. Just fucking stand. Just fucking yell.
That's the crazy thing is that like I feel like when we did that exercise with you, like I feel like, you know, people would be like, oh, bring emotion in the scene. So I'm like, oh man, like you feel like everything has to be manufactured. It was literally mind-blowing to me to have you be like, okay, stand up, and you'd stand at the back of the room, and you know, you'd be you'd give us a sign to like scream, and then this person's like whispering, and like it was so crazy how like literally just those things like brought the emotion into it. Like you didn't have to think about what it was. It was just like that alone.
Yes.
And that for the first time for me, I think was the most eye-opening thing, was that like you don't have to manufacture it. Like you can, you know, like you don't have to, or not that you don't manufacture it, it's that you don't have to sit and think about like, what am I going to do? You can do the physicality and then it follows.
Less thinking is better. Yes.
Yeah.
At least to get the bicycle moving, you know, at least to get it going. Once it's going, then do whatever the fuck feels good to you. Once the scene is going, you can pretty much do anything and it'll work. You know, it's just the beginning to get it going, to get it safely moving. Why do it the hard way? This shit works every time. What's the mystery? Once you hear this and do it, why would you ever have to ask again what to do at the beginning of a scene? Now you fucking know. If I told you, if you asked me, how do I get from where I am right now to the Boca Town Center Mall, and I told you, I gave you directions that were the perfect directions to get to the mall, and you took them and you got there, why would you ask other people how to get from your house to the fucking Boca Town Center Mall? How many books do you need to read? You got there. You've been there. You went back. You've been there. You went back. There are an infinite number of ways to get to the Boca Town Center Mall. You could go on a ferry, and then you could go to Halifax, and then go to Ireland, and then take a plane to Australia, and then go to Indonesia, then cut over to San Francisco, and then go across, and then go down I-95 to Glades Road, and that's the way to get there too. Why would you fucking do that? You already know how to get there. What's the fucking mystery? You've been there.
So, I was there today.
I don't. The hard part with this shit, it seems not to be. It's not that you don't know what you're doing. Is that you don't do what you know.
Yeah.
Say that one more time.
So good.
Because you're looking for some other way to get to the Boca Town Center Mall.
No, not the whole story.
Apparently, the quickest, easiest way to get there just doesn't interest you. Sometimes it's like, I know that, but I want to do it my way. Then do it your way. But just don't forget that there is a better way that works every time.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like like I walk on stage and I'm walking up to like say John or something like that. And I'm walking, and in my mind I'm like, okay, how do I walk? I'm asking myself, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, I know how to freaking walk. Why is it tough to walk to John when I already know how to walk? Like, why is that even a thought in my head? You know, like why am I, how does my body move when I walk? How does this? I do it every day. Why is it an issue when I get up on stage and I got to walk across to John? Now all of a sudden in my head, how do I walk to John when it's something I do every day? You know, how do you escape just the natural things you already know about? You already know how to get to the mall, like you're saying, but how do you just simplify it in your head? Like, this is how I walk, and I don't have to ever think about it again, you know?
I think for me, it's, I picture myself in a rehearsal, and I picture myself on the back line, and things are going on and scenes are going on, and I try to think now, what do I think when I'm standing on the back line? And I'm doing two things at once. I'm hearing things that are being said and seeing things that are being done, and those are making little snowflakes of ideas fall in my head. Like, oh, she says something about cheese. She doesn't like cheese. Okay, it's cheese. I got to put cheese in there somewhere. Something's going to happen with cheese. Maybe if no one else does. But that's happening. But at the same time, I divorce myself from that and think I'm going to go into the next scene, and I'm just going to go. And when I go, I will look at my partner and decide. I'll look in her or his eyes and think, should I walk away? Should I walk towards them? Should I yell? Should I I'll get something from their eyes or from the way they're standing or the way they're moving, and I'll forget about the plot. I'll just care about how to make an impression on them. How can I make an impression on this partner of mine? Who knows where the scene's going to go? Who cares? But how do I make an impression? How do I signal to them I'm in this shit? And they signal back to me verbally or physically or emotionally, they're in this shit too. And then once things get rolling, once we're locked in an embrace and rolling around, then we can start talking about cheese if it's still relevant. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. You're just, yeah, it does. It does. I'm thinking about walking like it's all up to me how to walk, when really I look at the guy across to me, and together we're just going to walk however we choose to walk in that scene, rather than me deciding in all my head. Maybe it's just almost putting too much pressure on yourself to create, when you could really just allow, just a glance and a thought and an expression to each other to create everything without ever having to ever think about it.
Yeah, all I want to create is an impression on my partner.
Hey, Tom, when you say impression, I interpret that as you want to make a, like, what does an impression mean? Like, I mean, I know what you're saying.
Hang on, we've got a new arrival.
He's probably,
So when I say make an impression, I don't know. I guess it's kind of like going out on a date. What's an impression? Saying the right thing and making them realize you're there with them.
Is there another word for connect? You want to connect with them, or is that different?
It's connect. Yeah, sure. I guess connect is kind of that. Yeah. But if you want to parse it out, I mean, connect means two-way to me. To connect means we got each other. Before we've got each other, I've got to let them know what I'm doing. I got to make my play. So I'm reaching out for the handshake, and then they reach out for the handshake, and now we're connected. But this is me making an impression. It's like, I guess it's more of an intention, to go out there and see if you can interest or get a rise out of your partner in some way. Surprise them a little bit. Get them emotional. Emote with them. Get in some emotional thing with them. I think that's it. And then everything else follows. Because if I forget the emotional shit and it's just this, then we're not helping anything, and there won't be really a connection. It'll just be two people talking at each other to try and get some point.
Yeah, I think that's what Barry says sometimes. He goes, enter a scene with an emotion.
Always.
Yeah.
Well, that is one thing that people teach. Enter a scene, yeah, with an emotion, or I say enter a scene with a point of view, because your emotion can change depending upon the other person. If you enter the scene only with emotion, sometimes it's, if you don't look at your partner, what you're doing may be clashing with what they're doing. So if you do this physical stuff, if you do this loud, soft stuff, you will generate an emotion organically without having to preset one. So preset an intention. I'm going to go in there and yell, or I'm going to go in there and hug this person, or I'm going to go in there and turn my back on this person, or I'm going to be upset. But you don't have to preset an emotion that you're going to wish you didn't do later. Like, maybe it doesn't fit. It can't hurt to do that, but if I want to have as few things pre-planned as possible before I walk into a scene, so that anything can happen. If I pre-plan an emotion before I get into the scene, and I go in there every scene that I ever do, and I do that, I've already limited all the possibilities in that scene except for that emotion. I want to be sensitive to the other person. What do they need me to do? What can we do together? How can I create an emotion in them? How can they create an emotion in me? So I enter with a point of view.
So, Tom, is the physical stuff you're talking about, would the exercise we did where we're supposed to be doing something, you're supposed to be fishing, you're supposed to be fixing something. I mean, is that the same principle? Like, hey, you go in, if you're doing something, if you're busy doing something else, it seems like that was as helpful to me at those times as, just go in and think, all right, I'm going to be kind of a loud guy, or I'm going to be the whisperer, I'm going to, like you said, turn your back on your partner. Or
that's different. That's a slightly different tool, but the purpose of that is slightly different from the purpose of, say, walking away from someone or starting to yell at them or whispering or interrupting them or that sort of. The purpose of those things are to generate dynamics between you without having to think about them. They'll just start to be there. So it's less thinking. The purpose of the other thing that you say about the doing one thing while you're talking about another, it does exactly what you say. It gets you out of your head. The purpose for you as the improviser is it gets you out of your head. You're not, it anesthetizes that part of your brain that's trying to plan and plot things. It's fun for the other person because they can play against someone who's fixing their car and talk about shit that you wouldn't talk about with someone who was fixing their car. And it's fun for the audience because they are, if you're lying there fixing your car, talking about to your wife about how you want a divorce or how you've actually been sleeping with the neighbor, that information right there is kind of fun in a scene. It's even more fun when you care so little about it that you're actually fixing your car while you're saying it. That context that you get from it. So that's what the audience gets out of that. And what you get out of it is just what you said. Is it takes you, it anesthetizes your brain and gives you something to fucking do with your hands. It gives you something to do. That's how
I see. I definitely see that. Like, what do you do with your hands? Because a lot of times I've been like recently I've been trying to like start a scene doing something with my hands, so I already don't have to think about it. I'm like one time, and this was a funny scene that me and you were in where I went down. I was just going to tie my shoe, just something to do, while it's developing. And I went down there, and you went right into gardening or planting or was something. It ended up being a funny scene, but my original thought was just to come in doing something so I could just eliminate that part of my brain and then see what develops, even if it was just tying my shoe,
Yeah.
I think sometimes, like, if you're sitting there talking to someone, even if you're not moving, you start to get this little whisper in your ears like, oh, I should be moving. But in real life, I might not be moving, but I'm fine with it. But when I'm standing up there, I feel like for realism, I need to be doing something because that's what I'd be doing for realism. But meanwhile, in real life, I might not even give two shits if my hands move the whole conversation, But sometimes when you're up there too long in the same position, you start to get the whisper like, oh, do something to make it seem more real, But in real life, you might not do anything.
If you've been in a scene for a while and you start to think that maybe it's going stale, just start doing that physical shit. And I don't mean physical shit like having to do push-ups, but start doing the dynamic stuff. Change your emotion. Start finding a reason why you need to suddenly yell, or why you need to suddenly whisper, or why you need to suddenly cry. If you're just doing a scene and there's no reason for you to cry whatsoever, and suddenly you start crying. If I'm your partner, I love it. I would love that. What? That is such a gift. Why? you're crying. So now I get to come over and either comfort you, or I get to try to stop you from crying, or I get to make it worse by saying all the wrong things. Uh, it's fucking perfect. So you're never at a loss. You're never at a point where, oh shit, the scene's going too long. What do we do? Fucking cry.
When in doubt, cry. I think I was my ex-girlfriend. Same idea.
I told you I had a student once, and I told him that, and he did it, and threw himself on the floor and kicking and crying, and he had a shaven head, and his whole head would turn red when he cried, his whole face and his head, and he got such a reaction, a great reaction from it, that he started doing it in every scene. We started.
He's the crier.
Yeah, we started calling him Crying Tony, and he didn't care because it worked. So he kept crying, and he was eventually in the cast, and he cried in almost every scene he was in. He found some reason to break.
His name was Crying Tony.
We used to call him Crying Tony. Tony Gallardi. He's a great guy. He's out in L.A. now. He was wonderful.
That was his niche. He was the crier. That became his claim to fame.
When he found that was the first honest laugh he ever got doing improv in classes, and suddenly he's like, "I'm doing this shit." And I told him, I said, you know what? If you cry in every scene you're ever in, the only people who are going to know that are other improvisers. No one's going to ever leave the theater and say, you know, that guy cries a lot. They're just going to say, hey, I laughed at that fucking guy all night.
There you go, Lee. You maybe can be lead and crier.
The lead. That beats Lee, the guy with the walker.
I think the one beautiful thing about improv that I like, and the one thing that's the hardest, is to just kind of realize that you can create a world. You know, at some point when you're a kid, you become an adult, you become structured, and then now this is kind of like reverse engineering you. You can go back to the kid that can create any world you want, and that's the hardest part. Lee's actually really good at it, and I used to try to shut him down. I'm like, Lee, what do you mean purple monkeys jumping out of, where the hell did that come from? Like that. And then now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, how the hell did he come up with that shit? Like, like who thinks of that stuff?
Yeah.
So it's neat to kind of retrain your brain.
Yeah, that's the other thing about all that dynamics shit and do the scene dynamics and the emotions. Suddenly, stuff comes out of your mouth that you didn't even know was going to come out of your mouth. It's like you say shit, and it's like, and you think, what the fuck did I just say? Who would have thought that? And you wouldn't have thought that. It's like priming the pump. You got to prime them, and then suddenly this stuff comes out of you that intellectually never would have come out of you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was the hardest part. Playing a straight guy. I think in the beginning, all of us kind of went through the training together, and all of us, like, we always played the normal role we would play in our normal life. That was our improv dust. And at no point did we stray away from it until we were months and months into it, where we started to actually realize and create a world. And even once we realized it still took months and months more to actually be a part of just creating a world and not having an issue with creating something that wasn't that you could normally see. And it was just really tough to kind of like creativity to be there.
And then to add on that, then it became the how do I acknowledge my partner's created world? How do I join that world without shutting that world down?
There you go. Yeah. Well, first you have to listen, which a lot of improvisers at the beginning don't do. They're so intent on what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? What do I do? That they aren't listening to what their partner just said and realize all they've got to do is say, uh-huh. That's it. That's your contribution. Uh-huh. Good contribution. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Stuff just does start to come out, and you do create a world, and there's no reason not to.
Yeah. There is no reason not to. That's what's so beautiful about this. You can do it. You can, just like if you're like a programmer, you can create. If you're programming video games, like these guys program video games, come up with this stuff that I would never think of. Yeah. And they make it real life. Like we're doing something similar on stage, and we're allowing ourselves to do it, and it's pretty awesome that I'm even being able to think like that again, because I gave that shit up when I was 10.
Look who's here. Things are about to get real.
Lauren!
Whoa. Whoa. Let's all talk slow. Pretend her shit's broken.
She's in
Are
there.
you a musician?
Everybody freeze.
She's deeply
I don't-
deep. There she is.
What up, peeps?
What's
Dang.
up, peeps? You're in.
Purple.
Yeah.
All over.
I don't see her. How come I don't see her?
Open your eyes,
There you are.
USA. I'm
Maybe-
right here.
Maybe you can't see beauty, Lee.
Oh, American woman.
Oh yeah.
Hey guys.
Oh hey.
Hi there.
Lauren.
Okay, let's repeat everything that we've said for the last hour.
No, the first 3 minutes.
No.
Everyone grab 10 minutes.
Well, to what you were just saying about creating a world, you know what Second City does and has done for years, and actually since the beginning, what we used to do down in Miami now and then was we would use improv in rehearsals to create sketch. Second City originally, when they started doing Heralds and stuff like that, they didn't think of improv as a thing that you perform in front of an audience. They thought of improv as a thing that you do to generate ideas for characters and for sketches. So they didn't used to do a lot of improv performances. They did a lot of sketch. So we used to, whenever we needed a sketch show, like a month and a half before we would need a total sketch show, we would do a bunch of heralds on a particular topic. Like if it was going to be a Christmas show, we would do heralds based on Christmas, and somebody would sit outside of the herald and write down everything that happened in every scene, and then afterwards we do a few of them, then we'd go over it, and it's like, oh, these characters who did this, and how about Rudolph robs a bank, or how about stuff that you could never think of on your own, but would come out through improv, and then you'd take those things and say, oh, we'll make a sketch out of that idea. And so we would assign them, here, you take these 4 ideas, you go write a sketch, you take these 2, you go write a sketch. And so people would go away and they'd come back after about a week or so with a first draft of about 6, 7, or 8 different sketches based upon that. And so what does that say? It says that you generate worlds and ideas, and that stuff comes out of your mouth that you would never think.
He's hanging.
So is there a class that we can do that's like that, where you improv, some scenes and then try to write sketches? Or
no, but we can certainly create one.
Yeah,
that sounds like fun.
Like that.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mentioned that to Casey a while back. I didn't want to start doing it at Doghouse Theater yet. I wanted us to just do what we do. Any other?
I'd like to bring up sexism in improv, where I think that the tendency for me personally, and I've been trying to get over it with Lauren, where I always paint her as either a girlfriend or something, right? And I don't mean to do it. I could make her a guy. I could make her a fucking an antelope. I could do whatever I want. But the minute the scene starts, it's always like, "Hey, babe, did you see the thing?" Like it always goes to that same like kind of common core thing there. When really, it could be way more creative than that. I'm taking away from her abilities by me just creating her just instantly as a specific character.
Yeah.
You're the reason I suck. So thank you for admitting this.
There's an awful lot of that. There's an awful lot. It's not just sexism too. It's also other stuff. There's a lot, and it's not just men who do it. Everyone does it. Every time I walk into a scene and try to be a female in a scene, I'd say 70% of the time when I do that, the other person in the scene turns me into a gay guy. Which is not good, because
Lauren.
Not good because you don't like Chick-fil-A.
No, it's not good because it looks like now I've been trying to be a woman here, and now it looks like I'm gay bashing. for no reason, and so it's just the way it works. But you're right.
That's just the way it is.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that.
We had a big talk about this, and Adam was there, and Lee, and all. We all chimed in on this, where we did a scene where we had we were picking up Mexicans at Home Depot or something like that, right? And it became this thing that got real contentious between people about it's downgrade this and that. I said, well, when I play a Russian, I'm always drinking vodka and I'm drunk, right? When I play this that. But if I played a Mexican and I'm at Home Depot, now I'm degrading. It's so degrading. I said it's more of a hot topic button, than there's anything. And we kind of went around and around and around and around in circles. And we kind of, I don't know where we left off on it. I feel like, when you're up on stage that, if you're a character, you're a character. If I play a drunk Russian, just because there's not a drunk Russian in the crowd that's offended by it, I'm still basically characterizing that type of thing in my head. I'm still making them a certain type of person.
Yeah, I know. Every time I play a French man, I'm smoking. But we've had a big long talk about this more than once, the whole cast, and everyone should. One of the things that you have to keep in mind is that everything is not equal, that you have to have some sense of history. Russians were not put in internment camps in this country. Japanese people were. So there are groups of people in this country that have been historically treated like shit, and they've already been dumped on a lot. So to dump on them again is insensitive. Whereas I don't know of any French people that were put in internment camps in this country, or sent into or put in ghettos, or told to sit at the back of the bus, or any of that stuff. So it's the history of this country that you have to look at it and say, okay, there are certain things that are off limits because we gave up the right to make fun of these people because we fucked them. So I don't know who those people are.
So that's very understandable, right? Like saying, oh, go to the back of the bus, and that could be insulting. But what about from the point of, again, if you are make believe that you are Asian or that you're Black and you're imitating an accent or mannerisms, and you just become that character, and you don't do anything insulting, would that be insulting itself? Or, if you're just playing the scene and...
That's one of the ways I look at it is, and this is from experience, what would you do if an entire Black family, grandmother down to all the kids, were sitting in the front row watching you? How would you feel? How would you think they would feel? What kind of experience do you think, theater experience do you think they would have by watching you do what it is that you're doing? And if you're good with it, I have done it. I have done Black characters with Black people sitting in the audience, and did it respectfully, and it was just needed, but very, very, very rarely. But it's like a third rail. Why step on it?
Yeah.
What's the benefit as opposed to the downside of it? Is the benefit really outweigh the risk? Well, there are people, there are groups of people who can take it. For instance,
Not me.
I'm from Brooklyn. All you have to do is say Brooklyn and people laugh. No one ever said, "Oh, you shouldn't do a Brooklyn accent. You shouldn't make fun of that guy Tony. Hey, Tony, want a slice of pizza or what? Hey, you shouldn't do that because you're going to offend people from Brooklyn." No, you won't. People from Brooklyn don't give a shit. They don't give a fuck what you do or what you say or what you think. Fuck you. You want to do that? Do it. You're not going to offend someone from Brooklyn. You're not going to offend a New Yorker. But you might offend, I don't know, a Mexican. who've just been told that they're all a bunch of rapists and we need to build a wall. So but you're not going to. So no, I never thought another fucking person making fun of New York. Everyone makes fun of New York. Everyone makes fun of where I'm from. Everyone around the world. So who cares? But then there were people who
rightfully so, though. No, I'm just kidding.
Philly too. People make fun of Philly all the time.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's a woman on YouTube, and you might have seen her on Facebook, this and that, and she's doing her dogs. She's like trimming her dog's nails and one of the things. And you can see that she's a white girl, but she's going, you want gel? You want gel? You want this? And she's doing like the Chinese girl that does a manicure. And she's doing
gel.
Vietnamese.
Yes.
Want gel?
You want crystal gel, honey?
There was someone
pick a color.
There was someone in our cast years ago who used to do that. Who did this Japanese accent. I hardly, sometimes it sounded Japanese, sometimes it sounded Chinese, like people can't tell the difference. And this person did it all the time until I spoke to them and said, you got to stop. You're not doing it for any other reason than to get a laugh. And it's just not, it's just wrong. And this person said, you're right. I never thought of it that way. I never saw it. It just seemed like a funny thing to do. And I said, maybe it's a funny thing to do at the Thanksgiving table with your family and make fun of Black people or make fun of just Asian people or make fun of Puerto Ricans. New Yorkers love making fun of Puerto Ricans, sort of Puerto Ricans in New York. The people with the best sense of fucking humor in where I come from were Puerto Ricans. They're always making jokes about Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans. But maybe that's just that's inside humor. That's stuff you do at home, maybe. But on a stage, there's people sitting in the audience. There was a woman down in Miami who used to do that same Japanese thing, and she would host the mating game, and she wore the Japanese that hat and a kimono and stuff, and she would do the whole thing in this Japanese accent, and I kept asking her not to do it. And one night she did it, and there was an entire family of Japanese people sitting in the fucking front row.
Okay, but at what point, so I can do a Hispanic accent because I go to school in Miami, and I also have a stepdad some of you guys may know, some of you guys may not. So my parents were married for 29 years, and then my dad came out, and he got married to like 3 different guys within a couple of years, and his husband is from Venezuela. And so that's like one of our, like, I'm able to do a Hispanic accent very well, but it's never in the sense of like, I would say like making fun of Hispanic people. It's just like an accent that I can talk in. So like at what point do you necessarily consider that, like, because I've never had somebody tell me like, oh, like, don't, whatever, because it's very clear. It's just like some of the mannerisms in terms of like literally and things like that, it's not like I'm talking about people jumping the border or like anything that it's like, there's also a racial connotation to it.
The accent.
Pero like literally I go to school in Miami and it's literally the best thing ever. Okay, and so I went to go get directions to get the coffee, and then put on one-way street, and then you look on the left and there's a yellow house and a purple one across the street, and when you go there they give you the best cafecito ever.
Ay, cafecito, Chonga, let me tell you.
Chongalicious. So like I can break into that accent.
I can too, because I can do it too, because I did improv in Miami for 12 years. And
yeah, so like when I do it, it's never in a sense of like, one, I try not to do, like, if we're doing something with characters, I feel like that's the easiest one for me to go to. But again, it's never in a sense of like, it's in that way of like, okay, it's like New York and Miami, like you can make fun of Miami, but it's never like I'm making fun of somebody that's like, being held in a detention center or something like that. Yeah. Like it's never,
right. Yeah. Well, I used to have to do it because everyone else on the stage was doing it. In other words, we used to have this thing where we were doing what do you call it? A telenovela.
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone in this, it was like a Harold, but a telenovela. So I had to be, Gilberto,
Yeah.
And but I would periodically ask my Hispanic or Cuban or whatever friends at the theater, I said, if if I'm not doing something cool, if this isn't good, you tell me. If it's offensive, I don't mean for it to be. I'm just doing what you're doing. But if I'm doing it and you're like, I wish he would fucking stop doing that, just tell me and I will stop doing it.
Yeah.
And I would
So it's just listening.
I would periodically ask them. I said, look, is this okay? You got to tell me because I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
That's very kind of you to ask them.
Well, I don't want to be that guy. Half the audience was
okay?
Hispanic and I don't want to
Is
piss
this
them off.
okay?
Is my accent okay?
So if you
Does
don't
this hurt?
play into the stereotype, then is it okay? Or do you think it's more beyond that?
You know, it's so hard to tell because what we do as improvisers is stereotype. That's what we're doing. We're you know, when you go out in a scene and you say, okay, I'm going to be this guy. I'm going to be the redneck who wants to be a fireman. You know, you're being stereotypical. You're taking humanity and you're taking some piece of humanity and saying, I'm going to portray humanity for people now. How do you do it if you don't stereotype? People have to recognize what you're doing, so you have to take these shortcuts. So if I'm going to be a gay guy, I have to do that. Or if I'm going to be a woman, I have to do that. Or if I'm going to be Scottish, I have to do that. If I'm going to be French, I have to smoke a cigarette and tell you, well, Americans all eat ketchup. And it's all, we are stereotyping. So where's the line? All I can tell you is if whatever it is you're doing, whoever you think you're doing, picture 10 of those people, the entire family, sitting in the audience. Would you still do what you're doing?
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, then do it. If the answer is no, then fucking don't.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Okay.
No, not me.
We'll start with Sarah because on my screen, she's on the top left corner. So Sarah, give us a thing and we can all clap.
Oh God, you said something so genius tonight.
Oh, fuck.
So genius, she forgot.
Oh my God. First of all, I learned a lot of new vocabulary today.
Lampooning, yes.
Yeah.
It's actually a word.
Circle jerk.
Claw.
Not new. Not new.
God, I can't. It was really good.
Oh,
It was.
God. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Just
that's
blown away.
Once in a
I'll think of
millennium.
it eventually, but
Okay, we'll
we're
jump
just gonna
over.
go with Tom said something good.
We'll jump over. We'll go to Lee, who's in the next corner. Got a thing?
Yeah,
Slammed over.
I liked it when make an impression on your scene partner when you enter a scene or when you're beginning a scene. Make them feel your presence.
Yeah.
Oh.
1, 2, 3.
Hey, I remembered. It was well, I mean, it was a long time that you talked about it, so it's probably bad that I just forgot that, but it's fine. You were talking about the bike and you were like, why the fuck would you spin the wheel to make the pedals go, right? So like that was.
Oh. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Ready? Good. Let's jump down. Paul just left. Oh, there he is. Paul.
Oh.
What do you got?
I was muted. I think just once again, going into a scene. Is this what somebody else just said?
Doesn't
Sorry,
matter.
I'm trying to make something to eat. Just going in and not worrying about anything else except the dynamics of close, loud, quiet. What that kind of gets your mind off of trying to think of plot.
Yay. Now we got you, Lauren.
So I came in kind of late, but I felt very welcomed, and I was like, it was eating at me when I couldn't be here, and I just feel so happy that I was able to join you guys, and I love you all.
Okay, I'll take that. I got you now, John.
No, yeah, back to what Lee was saying. I guess what you're saying is pretty much versus starting grounded and then finding the funny versus like starting witty and funny and then trying to stay grounded. I think that's what we kind of were talking about yesterday and what dwelled in today as well. And just Yeah, back to the comment about the bike. Just stick with what you know, and if it works, it works. So,
Yeah.
pretty much it.
Yeah.
Early on that.
Jeremiah's up.
It's the most basic thought that in one of the things that I can take is think of the family in the first row, and if you think it's gonna bother them, just don't go that direction. Even though I don't think I tend to do that, but I think it is a branch that could be explored, in a darker side of comedy.
Absolutely.
That could bring so much pleasure to any audience of any color if it can be explored the right way, But thank you for the advice.
Yeah. Daniel.
Well, it's just the how do I walk, how do I talk, how do I do this, and then you don't worry about any of that. You look at your scene partner, and once you make that initial impression, everything's going to kind of work its way out. So way too much pre-thought walking in. Let me just come in, do some sort of impression, and that's going to just connect us, and then we're just going to go from there. We don't need to try to remind ourselves how to walk when we're going up on stage. So
yeah. Okay. Adam.
I had heard what you said regarding kind of history and context when taking accents and impressions into consideration. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And to even expand on that, I think who the messenger is matters. If I say something and if Jeremiah says something, it could easily be interpreted differently, and rightfully so. So not just who's receiving the message, but who's giving the message matters. It's not all equal, like you said. And
yeah,
I think that's true.
What are you trying to say?
It's important for me to remember that.
Very true. Very true. Okay. And me, well, like I said, a lot of times it's not that you don't know what you're doing; it's that you're not doing what you know. And just do what you know. If it worked once, if it worked twice, if it worked 5, 10 times, then it fucking works. Just do it. Don't. It's not a mystery. Cool.
That's it for life, right there.
Yeah. Okay. Take care, guys. Like I said, we got a thing tomorrow night, 9:00. We got another thing Saturday night, 9:00. Check it out. It's on Doghouse Theater live stream both nights. They're funny. It's funny stuff. I wouldn't be involved with it if it didn't work. But
when are you opening up?
Don't know. This is not Wisconsin. We're not playing beer pong with people's lives. So
no,
we're not. Take care, guys.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right, good night.
Guys, thanks for waking up today.